Let's start with a fundamental truth. Kindness is indeed a beautiful thing. It's the glue that holds society together, the balm that soothes wounded souls, and the light that brightens our darkest days. But here's the kicker. Like anything powerful, kindness has a shadow side. When misused or misunderstood, it can lead us down paths we never intended to travel. So let's dive into these 4 ways kindness might just be your undoing. And remember, as we explore these ideas, keep an open mind. Sometimes the most profound truths are found in the most unexpected places. Way number 1, kindness will ruin your comfort zone. Now, you might be wondering, Jim, how on earth can kindness ruin my comfort zone? Well, let me tell you, true kindness, the kind that really makes a difference, isn't always comfortable. It's not about doing what's easy, it's about doing what's right. Think about it. When was the last time you went out of your way to help someone? I mean really out of your way. Not just holding a door open or saying please and thank you, but doing something that inconvenienced you, that pushed you beyond your usual boundaries. You see, genuine kindness often requires us to step out of our cozy little bubbles and into the messy, complicated world of other people's problems. It might mean giving up your Saturday to help a friend move, or staying late at work to mentor a struggling colleague, or having that difficult conversation with a family member who's heading down the wrong path. These acts of kindness aren't comfortable. They're not convenient. They don't fit neatly into our schedules or our comfort zones. But here's the truth. The most meaningful acts of kindness rarely do. When you embrace true kindness, you're signing up for a lifetime of discomfort. You're agreeing to be inconvenienced, to be challenged, to be pushed beyond your limits. Your comfort zone? Consider it thoroughly and utterly ruined. But here's the beautiful paradox. In ruining your comfort zone, kindness opens up a whole new world of possibilities. It expands your horizons, deepens your relationships, and helps you grow in ways you never imagined possible. I remember a young man I met years ago. Let's call him Tom. Tom was the epitome of comfort. He had a good job, a nice apartment, or a teen he enjoyed. He was by all accounts content. But then one day he decided to volunteer at a local homeless shelter. At first it was uncomfortable. The sights, the smells, the stories he heard, they were all far outside his usual experience. But he kept showing up, kept pushing through the discomfort. And you know what happened? His whole world changed. He developed deep, meaningful relationships with people he would never have met otherwise. He discovered strengths and abilities he didn't know he had. He found a sense of purpose that had been missing from his comfortable life. Tom's comfort zone was thoroughly ruined, and he couldn't have been happier about it. So my friends, if you're too attached to your comfort zone, if you're not willing to be inconvenienced or challenged, then kindness will indeed ruin you. It will shatter the walls you built around yourself and force you to engage with the world in new and sometimes difficult ways. But let me ask you this, is that really such a bad thing? Is a life of comfort and ease really preferable to a life of growth, meaning and genuine human connection? This leads us seamlessly into our second way that kindness will ruin you. Way number 2, kindness will ruin your selfishness. Now, I can almost hear some of you thinking, but Jim, I'm not selfish. I care about others and I believe you, I really do. But here's the hard truth, we all have a selfish streak. It's human nature, we're wired for self-preservation, for looking out for number 1. But true kindness, it takes a wrecking ball to that selfish instinct. You see, genuine kindness requires us to put others first, not just occasionally, not just when it's convenient, but consistently, even when it costs us something. And let me tell you, that's not easy. It goes against our basic instincts. It challenges our natural inclinations. Think about the last time you had the opportunity to be kind. Maybe it was giving up your seat on a crowded bus, or picking up the tab for a friend who's going through a tough consult, or staying late to help a coworker finish a project. In that moment, you had a choice. You could look out for yourself, protect your own interests, or you could choose kindness. When you choose kindness, you're essentially saying your needs are more important than my comfort right now. You're putting someone else's well-being ahead of your own desires. And every time you make that choice, you're chipping away at your own selfishness. Over time, this habit of kindness fundamentally changes you. It shifts your focus from what's in it for me to how can I make a difference. It transforms your perspective from self-centered to other-centered. Let me share a story with you. Years ago, I knew a successful businessman. Let's call him Jack. Jack had it all: money, power, influence. But he was also, to put it bluntly, incredibly selfish. Everything in his life revolved around his own wants and needs. Then one day, Jack's life was turned upside down. His wife was diagnosed with a serious illness. Suddenly, he was faced with a choice: continue living his self-centered life, or step up and be there for his wife in her time of need. To everyone's surprise, including his own, Jack chose kindness. He put his career on hold, rearranged his entire life to care for his wife. It wasn't easy. It wasn't comfortable. But day by day, act of kindness by act of kindness, Jack's selfishness began to crumble. By the time his wife recovered, Jack was a changed man. His priorities had shifted. His perspective had broadened. His capacity for empathy and compassion had grown exponentially. His selfishness, thoroughly and utterly ruined. And you know what? Jack will tell you it was the best thing that ever happened to him. Because in losing his selfishness, he gains something far more valuable, a sense of purpose, deeper relationships, and a more fulfilling life. So my friends, if you're attached to your selfish ways, if you're not ready to put others first, then kindness will indeed ruin you. It will dismantle your self-centeredness brick by brick, replacing it with a more expansive, more compassionate way of being. But again, I ask you, is that really such a bad thing? Is a life focused solely on your own needs and desires really more satisfying than a life rich in connection, compassion, and meaningful contribution? As we ponder these questions, let's move on to our third way that kindness will ruin you. Way number 3, kindness will ruin your cynicism. Cynicism. In today's world, it's almost fashionable to be cynical, isn't it? To look at the world through jaded eyes, to expect the worst from people, to scoff at idealism and hope. It's a protective mechanism, a way of shielding ourselves from disappointment and hurt. But let me tell you something, true kindness is kryptonite to cynicism. It dismantles our protective walls, challenges our pessimistic assumptions, and forces us to see the good in people and situations. You see, when you commit to a life of kindness, you're making a radical choice. You're choosing to believe in the inherent goodness of people. You're choosing to see the best in others, even when they're not at their best. You're choosing hope over despair, optimism over pessimism. And let me tell you, that's not always easy. The world can be a tough place. People can let us down. Circumstances can disappoint us, attempting to retreat into cynicism to protect ourselves from further hurt. But kindness asks something different of us. It asks us to keep our hearts open, to keep believing in the power of goodness, even in the face of evidence to the contrary. It asks us to be vulnerable, to risk being hurt or taken advantage of in the pursuit of making a positive difference. I remember a teacher I once knew. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah had been teaching in a tough inner-city school for years. She'd seen it all, violence, poverty, broken families. Many of her colleagues had become cynical over the years, hardened by the challenges they faced daily. But not Sarah. Year after year, she approached each new class with the same enthusiasm, the same belief that every child had potential, the same commitment to making a difference. Her kindness was relentless, even in the face of setbacks and disappointments. One day I asked her how she maintained her positive outlook. She smiled and said, "Every act of kindness is a vote for the kind of world I want to live in. I can't control everything, but I can control how I respond to the world. And I choose kindness." Sarah's cynicism, thoroughly and utterly ruined by her commitment to kindness. And you know what? Her students flourished under her care. Many went on to break cycles of poverty and achieve things they never thought possible. All because one teacher refused to give in to cynicism and chose kindness instead. So my friends, if you're attached to your cynical worldview, if you find comfort in expecting the worst from people and situations, then kindness will indeed ruin you. It will challenge your pessimistic assumptions, force you to see the good in people, and yes, sometimes leave you vulnerable to disappointment. But once again, I ask you, is that really such a bad thing? Is a life protected by cynicism really more fulfilling than a life open to possibility, hope, and the transformative power of kindness? As we contemplate this, let's move on to our fourth and final way that kindness will ruin you. Way number 4, kindness will ruin your indifference. Indifference. It's a comfortable state, isn't it? When we're indifferent, we don't have to engage with the world's problems. We don't have to feel the pain of others. We can just mind our own business and let the world take care of itself. But true kindness, it shatters indifference like a hammer to glass. You see, kindness requires us to care. Not just a little bit, not just when it's convenient, but deeply and consistently. It asks us to look at the world around us, really look and see the needs, the pain, the opportunities to make a difference. And once you start seeing, once you start caring, you can't unsee. You can't uncare your comfortable bubble of indifference. Consider it thoroughly and utterly ruined. I'm reminded of a young woman I met some years ago. Let's call her Emily. Emily was the epitome of indifference. She had a good job, a nice life, and as far as she was concerned, the problems of the world weren't her problems. Then one day, almost by accident, Emily volunteered at a local animal shelter. She saw firsthand the plight of abandoned and abused animals, and something in her shifted. She couldn't go back to not caring. Her indifference was ruined. From that day forward, Emily became a passionate advocate for animal welfare. She volunteered regularly, donated to causes, even changed her career to work in animal protection. Her life became more complicated, more challenging, but also infinitely more meaningful. You see, kindness doesn't allow us the luxury of indifference. It forces us to engage with the world, to care about issues beyond our immediate sphere, to take action even when it's inconvenient or difficult. And here's the thing, this ruining of indifference. It doesn't stop with one cause or one area of concern. Once you open your heart to kindness in one area, you'll find your capacity for caring grows in all areas. You'll start noticing needs you never saw before. You'll feel compelled to act on injustices you previously ignored. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly, you can see everything clearly. And once you see, you can't unsee. Your indifference is ruin, replaced by a deep sense of connection and responsibility to the world around you. Now, I can almost hear some of you thinking, but Jim, I can't care about everything. There's too much pain in the world. It's overwhelming, and you're right. We can't solve all the world's problems single-handedly. But here's the beautiful thing, we don't have to. Kindness isn't about solving every problem. It's about doing what we can where we are with what we have. It's about refusing to turn a blind eye to the needs around us. It's about choosing engagement over indifference, action over apathy. So yes, if you're attached to your comfortable bubble of indifference, if you prefer not to engage with the world's problems, then kindness will indeed ruin you. It will force you to care, to engage, to act. It will complicate your life and challenge your assumptions. But once again, I ask you, is that really such a bad thing? Is a life of indifference really more satisfying than a life rich in purpose, meaning, and positive impact? Now, as we wrap up our exploration of these 4 ways kindness will ruin you, I want to challenge you to think differently about what it means to be ruined. You see, when we say kindness will ruin your comfort zone, your selfishness, your cynicism, and your indifference, we're really talking about a beautiful kind of ruination. It's the kind of ruination that breaks down walls, that dismantles limiting beliefs, that clears the way for personal growth and meaningful change. It's like the process of renovating an old house. To create something beautiful and new, you first have to tear down what's old and outdated. It's messy, it's uncomfortable, it's sometimes even painful, but it's necessary for transformation. In the same way, kindness ruins us for the better. It breaks down our old, limiting ways of being and creates space for something new and beautiful to emerge. When kindness ruins your comfort zone, it's creating space for growth and new experiences. When it ruins your selfishness, it's making room for deeper, more meaningful or deeper, or sacredness and a greater sense of connection to others. When it ruins your cynicism, it's clearing the way for hope, optimism, and a more positive outlook on life. And when it ruins your indifference, it's opening up possibilities for purpose, passion, and meaningful engagement with the world around you. So my friends, I invite you to embrace this ruination. Welcome it, seek it out even, because in the end, this kind of ruination isn't destruction, it's transformation. Imagine a world where more people allowed kindness to ruin them in these ways. A world where comfort zones were constantly expanding, where selfishness gave way to generosity, where cynicism was replaced by hope, and where indifference was overwhelmed by passionate engagement. What kind of world would that be? I'll tell you, it would be a world of possibility, a world of connection, a world where problems that seem insurmountable today could be solved by the collective power of kindness. And here's the amazing thing, that world begins with you, right here, right now, with the choices you make today, tomorrow, and every day after that. So I challenge you, let kindness ruin you. Let it break down your walls, challenge your assumptions, and push you beyond your limits. Let it transform you into the best version of yourself. Because here's the truth, in losing your comfort zone, your selfishness, your cynicism, and your indifference, you gain so much more. You gain purpose. You gain deeper relationships. You gain a sense of connection to something larger than yourself. You gain a life that's richer, fuller, and more meaningful than you ever imagined possible. Now, let's dive deeper into each of these 4 ways kindness will ruin you and explore how we can embrace this beautiful ruination. First, let's revisit how kindness ruins your comfort zone. You see, comfort zones are like rubber bands. When we stay within them, they slowly contract. We become less flexible, less adaptable, less open to new experiences. But when we stretch them through acts of kindness, they expand. And with each expansion, we grow. Think about the most significant moments of growth in your life. I bet they weren't comfortable. They probably pushed you, challenged you, maybe even scared you a little. But on the other side of that discomfort was growth, was learning, was transformation. Kindness does the same thing. It pushes us out of our comfort zones in the service of others, and in doing so, it expands our capacity for empathy, for understanding, for connection. I want you to think about an area of your life where you're too comfortable. Maybe it's in your relationships where you've stopped putting in effort. Maybe it's in your career where you've stopped pushing yourself to learn and grow. Maybe it's in your community involvement where you've become complacent. Now, I want you to think about how an act of kindness could shake up that comfort zone. What if you reached out to that friend you've been meaning to call? What if you volunteered to take on a challenging project at work? What if you signed up to volunteer at a local charity? These acts of kindness might feel uncomfortable at first. They might disrupt your routine, challenge your assumptions, push you beyond your usual limits. But that's exactly where growth happens. Remember Tom, our friend who started volunteering at the homeless shelter. His comfort zone wasn't just nudged, it was shattered. And yes, it was uncomfortable. Yes, it was challenging. But on the other side of that discomfort was a richer, more fulfilling life. So I challenge you, let kindness ruin your comfort zone. Embrace the discomfort, lean into the challenge. Because on the other side of that ruination is growth, is transformation, is a life of greater meaning and purpose. Now let's delve deeper into how kindness ruins your selfishness. Selfishness is like a prison we build around ourselves. We think it's protecting us, serving us, but in reality it's limiting us. It cuts us off from the richness of human connection, from the joy of making a difference in someone else's life. Kindness is the key that unlocks that prison. It breaks down the walls of self-interest and opens us up to a whole new way of being in the world. Remember Jack, our selfish businessman? His journey from self-centeredness to kindness wasn't easy. It required him to put someone else's needs ahead of his own day after day. It meant sacrificing his time, his energy, his resources. But in that process of ruining his selfishness, he discovered a depth of love and connection he never knew was possible. Now, I'm not saying you need to completely neglect your own needs. Self-care is important too. But there's a difference between self-care and selfishness. Self-care replenishes you so you can continue to give. Selfishness hoards resources at the expense of others. I want you to think about an area of your life where you might be acting selfishly. Maybe you're holding on to a grudge instead of forgiving. Maybe you're hoarding your time or resources instead of sharing them. Maybe you're avoiding helping someone because it's inconvenient. Now, imagine how an act of kindness could transform that situation. What if you chose to forgive even if the other person doesn't deserve it? What if you gave generously of your time or resources even when it's not convenient? What if you went out of your way to help someone even when there's nothing in it for you? These acts of kindness will chip away at your selfishness. They'll challenge your self-centered instincts. They'll ruin your ability to put yourself first all the time. And in doing so, they'll open you up to a whole new way of being in the world. So I challenge you, let kindness ruin your selfishness. Choose generosity over self-interest. Choose compassion over indifference. Choose to put others first even when it's difficult, because on the other side of that ruination is a life-rich connection in purpose and love. Now let's explore further how kindness ruins your cynicism. Cynicism is like wearing dark glasses all the time. It might protect your eyes from the glare, but it also prevents you from seeing the true colors of the world. It dims the beauty, mutes the joy, obscures the goodness that exists all around us. Kindness is like taking off those dark glasses. It allows us to see the world as it truly is, full of both pain and beauty, both struggle and triumph. It opens our eyes to the goodness in people, to the possibility of positive change, to the power of small actions to make a big difference. Remember Sarah, our optimistic teacher. Her kindness didn't just impact her students, it transformed her entire worldview. In choosing kindness day after day, in refusing to give in to cynicism despite the challenges she faced, she cultivated a perspective that allowed her to see possibility where others saw only problems. Now, I'm not saying we should be naive or ignore the very real problems in the world, but there's a difference between being realistically aware of challenges and being cynically dismissive of the possibility of change. Kindness allows us to acknowledge the problems while still believing in the potential for solutions. I want you to think about an area of your life where you've become cynical. Maybe it's in your relationships where you've stopped believing the goodness of people. Maybe it's in your work where you've stopped believing in the possibility of meaningful change. Maybe it's in your view of the world where you've stopped believing that individuals can make a difference. Now imagine how an act of kindness could transform that cynical perspective. What if you chose to believe the best about someone even if they've let you down before? What if you put effort into making positive changes at work even if past efforts have failed? What if you took action to address a problem in your community even if it seems too big to solve? These acts of kindness will challenge your cynical assumptions. They'll ruin your ability to dismiss the possibility of goodness and positive change. And in doing so, they'll open your eyes to a world of possibility you might have been missing. So I challenge you, let kindness ruin your cynicism. Choose hope over despair. Choose optimism over pessimism. Choose to believe in the power of goodness, even when it's hard. Because on the other side of that ruination is a life filled with hope, with possibility, with the joy of being part of positive change. Finally, let's delve deeper into how kindness ruins your indifference. Indifference is like being asleep while the world goes by. It might feel restful, it might feel safe, but you're missing out on the richness of life. You're missing the opportunity to engage, to connect, to make a difference. Kindness is like a wake-up call. It jolts us out of our complacency and forces us to engage with the world around us. It opens our eyes to the needs of others, to the issues in our communities, to the ways we can contribute to making the world a better place. Remember Emily, who went from indifferent to passionate about animal welfare. Her journey didn't stop there. Once she allowed kindness to ruin her indifference in one area, she found herself caring more about all sorts of issues. Her world expanded. Her life became richer, more purposeful, more engaged. Now, I'm not saying we need to care deeply about every single issue in the world. That would be overwhelming and unsustainable. But there's a difference between focusing our energy on specific causes and being indifferent to everything. Kindness allows us to engage meaningfully with the world, to find the issues that resonate with us, to make a difference where we can. I want you to think about an area of your life where you've become indifferent. Maybe it's in your community where you've stopped paying attention to local issues. Maybe it's in your relationships where you've stopped making an effort to stay connected. Maybe it's in your personal growth where you've stopped challenging yourself to learn and improve. Now, imagine how an act of kindness could shake you out of that indifference. What if you volunteered for a local organization? What if you reached out to a friend you've lost touch with? What if you committed to learning a new skill to better serve others? These acts of kindness will ruin your ability to remain indifferent. They'll force you to engage, to care, to act. And in doing so, they'll open you up to a life of greater meaning, purpose, and fulfillment. So I challenge you, let kindness ruin your indifference. Choose engagement over apathy. Choose action over inaction. Choose to care even when it's easier not to, because on the other side of that ruination is a life rich in purpose, in connection, in the satisfaction of knowing you're making a difference. Now, as we come to the end of our exploration of these 4 ways kindness will ruin you, I want to leave you with a final thought. This ruination we've been talking about, it's not really ruination at all. It's transformation. It's growth. It's the process of becoming the best version of yourself. When kindness ruins your comfort zone, it's really expanding your capacity for growth and new experiences. When kindness ruins your selfishness, it's really opening you up to deeper, more meaningful connections with others. When kindness ruins your cynicism, it's really allowing you to see the beauty and possibility in the world around you. And when kindness ruins your indifference, it's really awakening you to a life of purpose and meaningful engagement. So I ask you one last time, are you ready to be ruined by kindness? Are you ready to have your comfort zone expanded, your selfishness dismantled, your cynicism challenged, and your indifference shaken? It won't be easy. It will require courage. It will require commitment. It will require you to be vulnerable, to take risks, to put others first. But I promise you this, on the other side of that ruination is a life more beautiful, more fulfilling, more meaningful than you ever imagined possible. A life where you're constantly growing and evolving. A life rich in deep, authentic relationships. A life where you see the good in the world and in others. A life where you're actively engaged in making the world a better place. That's the power of kindness. That's the gift of this beautiful ruination. So go forth, my friends. Let kindness ruin you. Let it transform you. Let it lead you to a life of greater purpose, deeper connections, and more meaningful impact. Because in the end, a life ruined by kindness is a life well lived. Thank you.